Awesome. And we're live. Everyone, thank you for joining me. Welcome to the Recruitment Show. Whether you're watching live after the event, YouTube, Spotify, all of that good stuff, thanks very much for joining. Today, we're going to be speaking about pay transparency. So many interesting topics and issues that brings up. But before we do, I just wanted to introduce my guest, William Tincup. And I want to give you a proper introduction, if I may. We've bonded over football. For those in America, that means soccer, English football.
That's right.
But William, if you don't know William, is a prolific speaker on all things HR and TA, and has been featured in many different media, TV channels, all of those things. And he's well regarded as an expert in the field. He's the president and editor-at-large of RecruitingDaily, which I get into my email box regularly. It's a wonderful read. He's got 3 different podcasts, although I'm still waiting for an invite to at least one of them. And he's also a venture partner at Evergreen Mountain Equity Partners and on the board of multiple HR and TA tech companies. William, that's quite an intro. Welcome to the show.
And the most important part is I refuse to use the word soccer because the rest of the world uses the word football. So like when I talk to even of my American friends, I'll say football. They're like, and they'll think American football. I'm like, no, the football.
Proper football.
Yes.
And our football came first.
Yes.
You know, let's be honest, football came first.
Well, the football that they play here is really handball because they're using their hands most of the time. Their hands are on the ball.
It's the old rugby. Exactly. It's not the old rugby. I mean, rugby's still a good sport. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like my rugby. I do. But I think it started from rugby.
So we have to outlaw the phrase soccer and just like they convert to people over and just like, okay, stop saying soccer. It hurts my head.
What's the American Soccer League like? Are you
I would equate it to the 3rd division of England's football. So maybe not obviously not Premier, not the Championship, but the 3rd league. We're about equivalent to that because we don't have development leagues, academies, and things like that. You either play college football, or you go pro. Like there's nothing.
College football is unpaid.
Right.
Is that right? Yeah.
That's right. And they can do these name, image, and likeness called NIL deals where they can get sponsored, but the schools don't pay them.
Right.
And that's different from like in Barcelona, you've got kids coming out at 9 and they're in their academy and they're growing all the way through that system. And Liverpool and all the great clubs, they have these academy systems. And then you've got, like in England, you've got all of these different leagues that lead up to obviously the Premier League. We don't have any of that infrastructure. So
interesting.
Our goal is to get out it. Like when y'all go to the World Cup coming up here, the expectation for England every World Cup, as it should be, is to win. That's the expectation, right?
Yeah, well, yes.
And I know that we haven't reached that since what, 68? Okay, I get it.
Yeah,
66.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So it's been a while. I got it. But every 4 years. The expectation is, and the talent is there, the expectation is that y'all win. Our expectation is if we can just get out of group, that's our trophy. Like if we could just make it out of group play.
The USA have been in a few World Cups, have they not?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But getting out of group, it's like that's a trophy. We should just get a trophy there. Well, and then now the women's different.
This is a great, there's so many similarities and between, sport and business and things like that. And the UK, I mean, England, so the UK, because we're different. England have had many talented footballers over the years, but never quite managed to work together as a team. It's super.
It's
chemistry,
it's fascinating.
teamwork.
But if you look back at like the Germany recently and Spain recently, they played well together because most of them played in the league together, even if they weren't on the same club. When Germany won, most of those folks played in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, Bayern Munich
right. So they knew each other, and whereas in England, for whatever reason, you've got English players playing most of them in the Premier League, but they don't snap together. And
There was
And
a lot of also like real competition. Like back we had
yes.
this golden generation. We had Frank Lampard and
Oh,
Steven
yeah.
Gerrard, and
Oh, yeah.
we never won anything. And
I know.
but there's so much rivalry between the clubs that they played
Yep.
for.
Yep.
It's difficult to really.
This one will be, I think, the most when it first was announced, I was like, "How are they going to do this? Like, it's going to be at a different weird part of the year. It's going to be a weird timing. Like, what in the middle of the desert? Like, how is this going to happen?" But now that it's upon us, it's really fascinating because most of the top clubs have not only that, you know, the Premier schedule, then they're playing Champions League, the FA Cup, like they're playing in all of these other competitions, and then all of a sudden you drop in the middle of that in November and December, you drop in the World Cup, which is usually in the summer when everyone has some time off.
Arresting, yeah.
And I think it's going to be fascinating. Well, first of all, the injuries leading up to it,
Yes.
injuries at the World Cup, but also, and you've seen this in years past, there's players that play in the World Cup that come out of nowhere and do amazing things, and all of a sudden they get huge contracts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's
Now
also
I'm
the fitness
fascinated to see
aspect
because
too.
yes, oh yeah,
Because it's kind of halfway through all of the European seasons.
that's right,
And again, someone picks up an injury. We were
that's
talking
right,
about Arsenal before. They're
that's right.
top of the Premier League at the moment. A couple of injuries to key players, and
Oh yeah.
suddenly, the season's
Well,
been knocked
and
off. And
some players, it'll be interesting to see how they play, but also what comes back afterwards. Like,
yeah,
any knocks that come backwards, so that the interesting schedule and the January transfer window is fascinating because, okay,
yeah,
some clubs that are maybe 1 to 2 players away, or maybe got some injuries, they're going to be more active in a January transfer window than maybe years past.
yes,
So it's actually kind of
yeah.
fascinating
It's
because,
hugely fascinating, and
yeah,
also linking it a little bit to pay,
yep,
which is like Premier League football, like football in Europe. Um, there's no publishing of the pay range
right,
on the contract. I mean, they're getting an awful lot of money. It's very
right,
transparent. You know how much these players are earning.
right,
Some people it weighs on their shoulders.
yep,
You have a big transfer. You're getting all this money. You got bought for all this money, and it
right.
really weighs on them. Like the performance and the pressure,
Oh yeah,
and all of that. So I mean, I think with the World Cup, some people will be in a wonderful negotiation position. They've done some of their best work at the World Cup. They've scored goals. They've made
that's right,
assists. All of those
that's
things.
right.
Now it's contract time.
Oh yeah, oh
You
yeah,
know.
and it's also extension time. So you have
Yes.
somebody that comes out of this and they do really well, a goalie or whatever, and they do really really well, and they're got 1 year left on their contract. You can bet that the club's going to get really aggressive and
Oh yeah.
go, you know what? Let's go ahead and figure out that extension now. We were going to wait until next season, but yeah, let's go ahead and do that now. So
Yeah. There's some
it
big players.
is,
Harry Kane, the Tottenham and England
yep,
striker. I think his contract runs out in a year
yeah, because he
or
signed a
so.
1-year deal. I think
Yeah.
last year there was rumors of him going to City
But now
before
we've
they
got
got, I think, probably the most amazing striker that I've seen in a while.
incredible.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
goodness, almost unstoppable. So yeah, that he didn't move to City. I thought he was going to move to City, but he
It looked
signed a
like
1-year
it.
deal. Yeah, it
They
looked
wouldn't
like
let him go. Yeah, they just wouldn't let him go.
right.
But it's super interesting.
Well, pay
Seiko,
transparency. I think what's interesting in football, but also in business, is it does create those expectations. So personally, you have those expectations, but it's also the expectations of the people around you. So because of transparency, the gal or the guy sitting next to you, now you know what they make and how that should associate to their performance. So it's one of those deals where when it's either they're really exceeding expectations, so they're not paid as much, maybe they're on not a great contract, and they're really really performing, you can see kind of a groundswell of support of like they should be paid more. Like
yeah,
like you can see, I could see players in the locker room kind of talking about like they should be paid more.
yeah,
But the opposite is also true. You got a huge contract, and a huge deal, and you're not scoring goals or you're not defending whatever the position is, you're not doing the bid. I could also see that being the talk of players, and we're not even talking about the media or any of the fans or anything else like that. We're just talking about players.
Yeah,
So I think transparency creates a lot of interesting dynamics.
definitely. Also, a lot of tension. If
Yep.
you're trying to lead that team, and you're managing the team, and you've got this person's come in at big bucks.
Yep.
Someone who's on half that is performing better. People are talking.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting because like many companies, it's you get penalized for staying long.
Right.
Don't you? Like the longer you stay at a firm, you get maybe inflation pay increases.
Right.
But when you move, you get the big increases. I think I read some stats recently. I think it's like on average, you stay at a firm, you'll get 2 to 3% increase. If you move, I don't know, it's somewhere between 5 and 10%, I think, depending on the sector on average.
Well, and I think that's the kind of the flaw of internal mobility is that, if you don't provide opportunities for your employees, they're going to leave. Right. So it's real simple. If you don't provide those opportunities, someone else will.
Yeah.
So when you have someone that's really talented, it really is in your best interest to not just dealing with pay, but to give them a different opportunity so that they can get a larger pay increase. So offering up those opportunities internally, or you're just going to lose that talent to an external company or an opportunity. So
it's very difficult. I spoke to Maleh, CEO from a financial services firm the other day, and he was asking me this. He's like, "Oh, this person wants a pay rise. We already gave him 5% or something.
Yep.
I mean, inflation in the UK is like,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's 9%, or I don't know. You never know quite how or what it is. And the guy said, "Look, I'm losing money right now.
Right.
I'm earning actually less. So what should I do?" And I said, "Well, are they a good performer?" And he said, "Yeah, absolutely, but I just can't give someone a big pay increase." I said, "Well, why not?"
Why? Yeah.
And he had no answer. And I said, "Look," I said to him, "Look, it's way more expensive to hire someone. You have to pay
100%.
recruiting fees.
Yep.
You have to invest time in interviewing. You'll have to pay them the bump anyway.
Retrain. You got to retrain them. Now you've got to work out all that chemistry and all that stuff that you've worked out. When you have again, even an average, I'll go an average performer and a top performer. So anyone that's below that, okay, that's a different thing. But it's the devil you know, right? Versus the devil you don't know. And you're right. You hit on it really, really briefly. The new person that you would hire is going to ask for that new salary. That's where they're going to start the conversation. So I think it's kind of an older mentality of I don't want to give someone a percentage larger, because that's probably how they grew up. Like getting these little 3, 4, 5, 2%, 1%, whatever the bid is, and they don't want to change that. And it's like the world's changed. You got to recognize that talent now drives, and regardless of whether or not you're in a candidate-driven market or employee-driven market or employer-driven market, the candidate's driving. Like the sooner we kind of get reconcile and get that in our heads, the candidate's driving, the better.
Yeah. And if you really like them, I mean, do all you can to keep them. Like your people are your business. I always say treat your people like your best customer.
Yep.
Like I think it was, I can't forget who remember. I think it was a Simon Sinek quote.
Right.
Said something like, "If your people don't like your business, your customers never will." So something like that.
Yeah.
So just treat them well.
It's interesting. I heard something similar this week that I thought was, or yesterday that I thought was fascinating. And they said, we treat our we treat our employees and our vendors extremely well, and that takes care of our customers.
Yeah.
So instead of the focus on, hey, treat customers really well, they reoriented themselves like, no, just treat your employees and your vendors really well, and all that susses out. All that works out.
Yeah.
So
it's super true. Because if you love working somewhere, you're happy and you'll enjoy, it's just, it comes across when you're speaking with whoever you might be speaking with.
That's right. It's just natural.
Yeah. But still, to your point, people are still in the mindset of, I can't give someone that's already in my firm 10% increase or
Why
something
not?
like that.
I
Just
think your natural question to him is the question we should be asking all leaders is why not? What is prohibiting you? And other than the slippery slope, we've all heard that argument. Well, if I pay, Janet, 10% rate, then Ronnie's going to want 10%. It's like, and do you want to
well,
keep them?
yeah. I mean, look, I think that I definitely agree. I think also I'm caveating that with make sure you know what your cash flow is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because of course, if there's a financial impact, because we've seen a lot of VC-backed firms recently rescinding offers,
Oh yeah.
retracting offers. So there is make sure you're running your business responsibly, of course. And if you
100%.
can't give someone the increase because you can't afford it, communicate it. And I think people appreciate like the openness. If there is a scenario like that.
I think that's actually getting back to football for a second. I think that's one of the things that the Bundesliga does really well is they make their clubs run profitably. So they've
Yeah,
mandated that your club has to be profitable. So you have to operate within the confines. And so
yeah,
what they've done really well is they go out and scout talent very early and bring in that talent, and then they make money in transfers, and that helps them then pay players. But I think it's fascinating the way that they've set up the league is exactly what you're talking about. Is it ensuring that you're running a profitable business, a good sustainable business?
yes, yeah. No, you're right, because I think transparency isn't necessarily about more money. It's
Right.
about people feeling that they're being paid a fair wage and the same as people at the same experience level doing the same job.
Which is in the compensation world they call it compression. So if I'm there at the firm for 10 years and then maybe we've been through a recession or two, and so I've gotten that 1 to 3% raise each year. When you come in, you're coming in at a much higher level doing the exact same job. Now we have pay equity issues,
Yeah,
inequities, if you want to look at it that way. But what they call that is compression. And so they've got to actually bring that person up gradually to where they're at the same level.
yeah,
Or if they don't, now you've got the worst problem of now you've got people that are equals doing the exact same job, getting paid differently.
yes,
And I mean, there's nothing worse, especially when you're dealing with marginalized folks or women or anything like that, is like you look at those inequities are real.
yeah. Despite this clause in some people's contracts, if you can't discuss your pay with other employees, I don't know if you have that in the US. It's
Yep.
often included in UK contract. Complete waste of time. Look, everyone speaks to each other,
I
and
I would be I mean, first of all, I think it's just natural. It's human nature, right? You're at the
yeah,
pub and you're talking about all kinds of different things. Hell, you're talking about football. You're talking about different things. It's like, hey, do you mind me asking you? We had bonuses last week. What was your bonus?
yeah.
You're going to say, yeah, I think I got about
Or
5K, whatever the
like
bid
one
is.
guy's like, round on me, guys. Like
Yeah,
whiskey, beer. And I'm like, hold on a sec, I didn't even get a bonus in my paycheck. How much you do
exactly.
that?
Exactly. But I think that's human nature is to be curious. And in this regard, it's curious as to where you stand. So it's really relative. Like, okay, when you're in a group, if you're not the top performer, you know who the top performer is. Okay, so
Yeah,
there's that. But it's kind of having that understanding and awareness of, okay, well, but where do I lie? If I'm not the top performer and there's 10 people on the team, am I bottom of the team? Am I in the middle of the team? Is the rest of the team paid the same? I think that's just curiosity. I think that's just
yeah,
natural human
yeah.
behavior.
And also the other aspect is that you can also just jump online and get a sense of where you're at amongst
Yeah.
like you go on Glassdoor and other platforms, and you can kind of get a real good sense of what you should be paid
Oh, yeah.
and
Indeed.
what other jobs are, and with pay being published on in some states in the US on
Oh,
job
yeah.
descriptions, you kind
Well,
of you know.
well, I think Indeed's doing. It'll play out. It could be the best thing ever, and it could be kind of the worst thing ever. We'll just time will tell. But in job descriptions where there isn't pay, they recommend based on what the job is, the job description, location, etc. They put a range in there, and they say Indeed's based on Indeed's data. This is what we believe the job to be paid. So that's interesting. They're also doing something where you take the same job description and then you submit it to Indeed. If it has no salary, or then it's ranked third. If it has a range, it's ranked second. If it has a specific salary, it's ranked first. So if this is
Interesting.
a $180,000 job, that's a $180,000 job. If it's 160 to 190, that's a range. And if there's nothing in there, they'll put data in there. And again, this could be the greatest thing ever.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on that? Like, for those that are just, they're hiring at the moment and they're just not into these, they haven't delved into this kind of conversation before.
I'll err on the side of, I think it's the best thing ever. And here's why. Negotiating pay, unless that's your job. Let's say you're a professional negotiator. Okay, so you should probably be good at negotiating pay. Outside of that, like if you're a software developer or a director of demand gen or a human resources director or HRD or something like that, your job is not negotiating pay. So the job pays for a bundle of skills and experiences and some potentiality. It's finite. It should be finite. And so someone's ability to negotiate has nothing to do with their performance on the job. So I think that's how we got to pay inequities, is because some people are just better at negotiating than others. And that, well, again, unless negotiating is your job, why is that even a factor? It's just you should pay for the skills, the acquisition of skills, experience, and potentiality. And that's what you're acquiring. And that should be finite.
Interesting. What's the other argument?
Oh, the other argument is that, well, and this comes from a third-party staffing and also internal corporate recruiting side of, if we can save money, they don't look at the inequities because that's not their problem. They look at if it's a $180,000 job and the best candidate takes $150,000, that's $30,000 that they save the company.
Yeah.
They don't look at it as that you just created a $30,000 inequity that the company is going to have to deal with at one point or another. And so it drives comp professionals crazy. But if you talk, and that's one of the things about recruiting and comp, because they're so far apart in the organization, they really should be, if not the same department, they should be really, really tethered together so that you don't think of it as a cost savings.
If you have them, no, it's interesting. If you have that mindset, I spoke to someone the other day and they were out of work. I got offered a job and they knew the offer was low.
Right.
Like they just knew.
Right.
But they took it.
Yeah.
And they got offered a job which paid what they felt that they were worth, and then they moved. So it's like short term, you can feel you're getting a good deal by underpaying someone. But again, like with all the transparency and the availability of information and people talking.
Like, think about what that company, the first company, what they got. They lowballed. They got somebody in there. They trained them. They onboarded them. They spent all that money and cost, and that person left because they felt like they were valued at a certain level. Okay, so did you win? You didn't win. You just got a body in there for a month or two, and again, talent and the candidates, the employees, they have an idea of what they're worth. And I think one of the other things that we haven't talked about that's interesting is millennials and Gen Z. We think, especially I'm squarely Gen X, we've thought that they have an inflated sense of worth. Like they just want to come out of college and be a VP and make $100,000, and that's just, done. So we look at that and go, well, we didn't grow up that way. And so that's an inflated way of thinking of themselves. But the truth is, if that's what they think, that's the reality. Because they're unwilling, Gen Z in particular, they're just unwilling to take the job. Like you or I, we'd take the job, even if we knew it was lower than what we thought. Okay, well, or what we should get, etc. We would take the job because we want to be employed. Gen Z, They won't lower their standards to just accept the job.
And I thought also it's worth noting there's other options apart from like regular employment.
That's great.
If they can go make themselves 100,000 on a YouTube channel, or get on TikTok, get paid for advertising. There's many other options, and a lot of people, I think just over more than half in the US will be freelancing or doing a gig in the next couple of years. So there's other options.
So
I think that's really interesting. One thing I want to note just on this Patreon thread, I think it's really interesting because certainly if you're publishing a pay scale, I think there's many obstacles to overcome. It's you publish a pay scale, I know 150 to 180, right? And I'm applying for the job. I don't want to get paid 150.
Yes.
I'm going to get paid 180, right?
Yeah, so, exactly. You've created more questions.
So the pay scale thing, but I want to get paid 180, but actually, like in the grand scheme of like the job, is that I'm kind of, let's say, just about experienced enough to do it, right?
Right.
Whereas you've got someone else, maybe they've done it for longer, they've gone through difficult times, they've built up more experience, they're more valuable than me,
right?
For among the different things, right? Okay, the job's the same, but they've got more valuable experience to offer than I have.
Yep.
And they're worth 180.
That's right.
I'm worth 150. It's very difficult to communicate it, I think.
Well, I think that's the thing is skills have a breadth and depth to them, and they're also always being kind of increased. So if you take something as like React development or Python, and so Python is a development language, okay, and there's a depth to Python, and there's a width to Python. And again, if you're acquiring that skill, you're testing out to figure out where they are in the breadth and depth of Python. Well, if that's associated to pay, then that's fine. That's easy to communicate.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you can actually say, hey, from 150 to 180, it's based on your breadth and depth of knowledge of Python. So if your breadth and depth, and it's all going to be tested out. So it's really easy to know your breadth and depth and where you stand. If it's fuller in the breadth and depth, you're closer to 180. If it's not there, you're closer to 150. But to your point, it's hard to communicate that because we don't think of skills as we're purchasing items at a grocery store. And this is milk. When you buy milk, and whatever it costs, in the UK, when you buy milk, I think it's like $2.50 here. So you buy a thing of milk, that's a skill.
Yeah, you're buying it has value.
It has value.
And the way people recruit a lot of the time, it's pedigree over potential. It's there's always this feeling you get. I mean, often it's not done so well. It's not as structured as that. So 100%. It's very difficult for people to communicate, to say, look, Lewis, this is why I'm offering you 150.
Right.
And this is where you sit in the scale. And so if it's done right, I think it's wonderful. Yeah. But if it's not, I can see companies running into issues of, what are your expectations? So again, in the US, for those that don't know, most states in the US, you can't ask people what they're currently earning.
That's right.
So again, feeds into this nicely. In Europe, UK, you ask people. It's odd if you don't divulge your salary and stuff.
Right. Well, there was a period here in the States where you had to prove what you earned. So not only were you asked, so the pendulum has completely swung. When people would ask you your salary and you said 110, they'd say, great, can you forward over your tax records, forward over your pay stub. Basically, we believe you, trust but verify, right? We believe you, but we also want to know that you're not just saying that number out of thin air. So then the pendulum all the way is over to, you just don't discuss comp at all. As a recruiter or hiring manager, you discuss it in terms of what the position will offer, but you can't ask them anything prior.
You can't ask them. No. And you've seen a lot of salary inflation in the US, maybe, which is one of those are one of the reasons, I think. It's interesting. If you're a candidate, by the way, just as a kind of slight side point, and you get asked what your expectations are, don't give a range.
Yeah, no,
You know,
because
you
they're
say
going to think the low
150
end
to
of the range.
180.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll think, oh, okay, 140. You're thinking actually 190, and
One
you know,
149. Done. Yeah.
give a number. Have one that you'll accept at stretch target, one you'll accept at, one you walk away, and give one number. It's quite a nice way of
Well, it's a market, just like any other market. If you have a farmer's market that you go to every, Saturday or Sunday and you get tomatoes, they're not the same every year. They're not the same every week. Sometimes they're 3 for $1, sometimes they're 4 for $1. Like, that's the way it is. Skills and talent, exact same it's a market. And if you need that skill, you might overspend for that. But now again, with pay transparency, and especially the stuff that we have to do in compensation, you've got to realize, okay, I'm overpaying. And I believe that's actually one of the things that the U.S. is reconciling with the venture capital, is that for the last 2 years, they've overpaid for talent. And so now they're having to kind of reconcile that okay, we don't need to pay that software developer $400,000. Okay. We needed them at that time. We thought we needed them at that time. We needed them at that time. We wanted to lock them down. And unfortunately, that created a bunch of pay equity issues. And it also, we didn't get the value. And so I think that there's a reconciliation that's happening there.
That's the other interesting thing. It's so the momentum is towards publishing pay ranges on job descriptions.
Right.
And so again, like the backdrop is it's very competitive to attract good talent.
Right.
And so what would you do now as a hiring manager? You're deciding what to put as the range. You have the budget to go more. Like there's always a little bit of like, if I really see someone I love, I'll go the extra.
Oh yeah. 100%. You can go to comp, you can go to finance if you need to. You can bring it all the way to the C-suite. Like, I found the person, the diamond, the rough. I found them, the forest, the trees. I found the person that is going to fix this, that, and the other. They want 20% more, 10% more than what we have in our range, and so that's going to create some stuff. But I found them, and that happens every day. Hiring managers do that every day. Recruiters do that every day. They find the candidate and they go and fight for that person's comp. And again, now you have to weigh okay, what are we without that? What are we without that talent? As opposed to what are we with that talent and paying more? What can we do to reconcile the inequities that will inevitably create?
Yeah, it's also interesting as well because again, we discussed a little bit, but once you start publishing the pay range for the jobs, everyone internally is going to know.
Oh, 100%.
So you've got
100%.
to make sure that you're addressing any inequities within the firm as well. Those real loyal employees that have been with you for 20 years. Now you're going to have to start pumping them up.
Well, and if you're again dealing with sustainable business and running a profitable business, all that stuff, that shouldn't be a problem. Like, why haven't we done that already? Is probably a better question for companies. It's like, it's again, compensation professionals, they know this stuff because they have software and they have Excel spreadsheets. They know these things. So, but why haven't we taken the opportunity through the years to then get those people right?
Yeah.
And so
and it's not that you can't afford it. Like if you're hiring someone else,
that's
come
right.
on.
You can
Don't hire them if you can't afford it.
That's right. You can afford it.
Yeah.
Which is, now that you get into the dark part of this, is they're choosing not to.
Yes.
And that's really dark, because you're essentially saying you're penalizing people for staying and performing as opposed to leaving. And I think that's fundamentally flawed. And I think that's, dealing with transparency and pay. I think, again, now find a different opportunity within your company. So maybe it's too hard to bring them up 20% at one year. Okay. But it might not be as difficult if you change their position and change their title and what they're doing, and then just give them 10% and change it again. Like, you're playing a game of, I've got to get you to a certain level.
But also, and us recruiters hate this. It's when they resign, and you come up with the counter offer that's 20% or 25% more. Why is it taking you for them to resign to give them the bump?
Yep.
Really.
And again, this is what's interesting is you think about this like from a healthcare perspective or health perspective. There's things that you can do that kind of preempt a lot of health related things,
Yeah.
or you can react to them. And I think companies have grown up in this with this mentality of, well, we'll just react to it. If it becomes a problem, we'll just deal with it when it becomes a problem, rather than being uh, doing things preemptively, because that's what you're absolutely spot on. People react to, oh, it comes out of nowhere. Chad's leaving. Chad's already put in his resignation. Oh, why? We find out, we'll ask, we'll do an exit interview. We'll find out. It's like, they just didn't feel like they were valued, and this other firm offered them 20% more. Well, if you find that out and you would have paid them 20% more, that's on you.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it happens it happens all the time.
Every day, every hour,
All the
it's happening
time.
right now as we're speaking, somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
It's just happening.
Um,
People are leaving jobs where they could stay. I know, and I know people that love their job, they love their team, they love their manager, they love their company. It's as simple as, this other company has got this other opportunity that I know I could do really well at, and they're literally offering me 25% more. I mean, when you have a family and all of that, I mean, you got to make that decision.
yeah, you've
You've
got to.
literally, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no,
not,
you've
it's a
got
no
to, and
brainer.
also, it might be, just to give some people some credit, it might be that you're running a company, you're running a team, and you feel like you felt like you're paying them fairly, and some company that's come in with, like, just got funding, and
Yeah,
and they've just
that's different.
whacked
That's
an
different.
extra.
Yeah,
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 that's different.
that's different. That's different. And again, I think there's enough pay data out there worldwide where those things.
Yes, yeah,
Salary.com, pay scale, you've got all kinds of government data. You know what's fair. But I think managers don't look at. I think it's the squeaky wheel that we've kind of grown up in the mentality of those that kind of come to us that are maybe better at negotiating or better at kind of propping themselves up and making them more important, or whatever, or being louder, or just whatever. They get paid, as opposed to people that just kind of put their heads down, quietly do their work, and they perform, and they don't negotiate. They don't talk about how good they are. They don't do those things. And so we just kind of let that, like, okay, well, obviously
yeah.
th're happy.
It's true. It was also, there's this classic thing in the City of London in financial services, where it was, if you didn't take your boss out and buy them a beer just before bonus season, that pay packet wasn't going to look so good. That has been like that over the years.
100%. And some people that's a game, right?
Yeah,
Um, and some people are great at playing that game, and some people aren't great at playing that game.
yeah.
Now you have to separate, why is that even a part of what they're getting paid? You know what I mean? Like, that's not their job, unless it's their job. Like I can see, for, like, if you're having an enterprise sales team, you'd want them to be savvy enough to understand how to treat the customer and do special things for the customer. And so you kind of want to see how they do this bit. Yep, okay. But okay. And that's even a stretch. But outside of that, why is that game a part of the job that they're compensated for? And it shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't be. I know a hiring manager we were hiring for, and he wanted he offered candidates a job. It was a sales role, but
Right.
he offered them a bit lower because he wanted to see if they'd negotiate, because it was a sales role. He
Yep.
wanted them to negotiate the salary,
Yeah.
which is quite interesting.
Now I can see there's a benefit in that, in the sense of people understanding, like a salesperson understanding how to say no to a deal. In negotiations, there's a thing called BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So salespeople actually have to be good at negotiating.
Yeah,
That this is a skill that, especially enterprise salespeople, we'll just say, they've got to be good at reading the customer, understanding budget, understanding that they're going to come in low, you're going to come in high, and understanding at one point you can't do that deal, or at one point that you should say yes to that and they should say yes to it. So
yeah,
I could actually see an argument being made for putting people through that process. But what I would do with that is I would put them through that process and put them at a little bit lower just to see if they ask for more. And even if they don't ask for more and you still want them, you don't hire them at that lower salary. You
Yeah.
hire them at what you were going to hire them, and you teach them, hey, this was a bit, this was a teachable moment. We came in purposely about 7% lower than what you were asking because we wanted to see you fight for what you think was just.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've learned the lesson. So like I can see a great argument being made for this being a coachable and trainable, teachable moment,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not a reason for paying them less.
No, for sure, for sure,
Right.
for sure. I think it's also worth mentioning that if you're, because it's a bit of a minefield now, I think, and also, the other thing is, pay is not everything. It's very
100%.
rarely. I mean, I find, I don't know about you, it's rarely the number one reason why people are moving.
Yep.
Rarely. Culture, people,
Yep.
no feedback, the team, all of those things. So I think if you are, and it's also, as it was said, there's a range, right? Like different industries pay differently for
Right.
different types of for the same job. Like you
Yep.
can, you can earn differently in different sectors, and I think
That's right.
it's important to communicate pay, but also just think about all the other things that you can do to make people want to join you and want to
Yeah.
stay. And I
Yeah,
think that's important to know.
I think added to everything that you had on the list is the concept of hybrid work and remote work.
Oh yes, yeah,
That's actually the number one and two phrases in Indeed is remote and remote work. And so now that because of the pandemic, we've learned that a lot of knowledge working jobs can be done from anywhere in the world, which is great because it opens up your candidate aperture to anywhere in the world. It also opens up that people, if they've moved to if they've moved to the Caribbean and they like living in the Caribbean and they want to do the job in the Caribbean, they're not going to the office.
yeah, no,
So I think that, I mean, they might take less in that scenario. Like, okay, you know what? I'll take a hit, but I'm going to live on the beach.
yeah.
So you know what? I understand that I'll take a hit.
On that, what do you think of pay by location? Like, do you think people should doesn't matter where you live, even if you're in
I
a lower cost
I
location, or?
think it's the worst concept possibly ever created in HR is the cost of living because where you choose to live is your choice. And it has no bearing on what you're being, what should be your acquiring skills, experience, and potentiality.
Yeah,
And those things, that's what you're acquiring, whether or not they work in Wyoming or whether or not they work in the UK or Paris, they choose those things. They can work, most people can live anywhere in the world. And even within a country, like the UK, you don't have to live you don't have to live in central London. You can choose to live somewhere else, but it's a choice. So
yeah.
why is the company paying for you to live somewhere? They're
We've
paying for skills.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. We in this country have always had this thing called London allowance or London waiting. So this is the thing. It's like, so you're working in London, so maybe you commute
Yeah,
an hour's commute. I mean, it's probably gone up now, but you'd be paying £4,000 a year for your
right.
travel, and you'd be traveling into London 5 days a week. And every company in London would pay you a London allowance.
Mhm.
So there's this legacy thing. So
Yep.
now they're saying, okay, you can go and work in Manchester. Rent's
Oh,
cheaper. You
yep.
haven't got to travel in. So,
We're gonna
maybe
take that allowance
you spend a
away.
net 10 grand net. Well, let's split the difference. Go and live
Yeah.
in Manchester, and we'll pay you 5 grand less.
I think in those scenarios, you pay for the skills as we've talked about, and then if you want them to be in the office and the talent wants to be in the office, then you work out something on that's related to commute. That's fine. Like that's a part of their compensation package.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
see
Yeah,
that it's not based on, okay, Sydney is an expensive city, Tokyo is an expensive city, London, San Francisco, Manhattan. Okay, so there's some expensive places in the world. Got it. But if you choose as an employer and you want them to be in the office, then you're going to have to pay them more to be in the office.
yeah,
And And that should be not now you're not just paying for skills, you're paying for that privilege of having them in the office. And
Interesting.
so
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and so again, you associate that instead of, hey, we built this wonderful box. This is what the culture of our company. You come to the box and we're going to give you some money because you live in Manhattan, etc. I believe that the location-based pay is where we've hidden a lot of pay inequities. And I'll tell you the story of Janet and Robert. Janet lives in Topeka, Kansas. Robert lives in San Francisco, California. They do the exact same job. They have the exact same experience. Because of where Janet lives, its cost of living is so much, it's almost half of what it is in San Francisco. Why is she making less? Well, but at the end of the day, when you look at it, it's a woman that's being paid less than a man doing the exact same job. That's how it shows up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I'm all in. I mean, my company, and we have a US firm, and we have UK, Europe, and stuff. We're fully remote,
Yep.
and if I just talk about the US team, they're in all different parts of the US. So Texas, New York, South Carolina, Florida, they're all on the same deal,
Yeah,
and they know,
that's smart.
and I've communicated it, and everyone knows where they're at, and it's completely, and I
I
don't
think
care where they live or
I
where they
think that's
work.
Lewis. I think
I mean,
that's first of all. I think that's the way you're going about it is the way that all leaders should go about it. It's like, listen, wherever you choose to live, it's cool. This job requires, if it requires you to come into the office, well, that's a different thing. But if it's
yeah.
remote, why do we even care?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know?
I think if you're right, if you're lucky enough to do a job where you don't have to go in, right? You're not
Yeah,
a factory worker,
right,
an Uber
right,
driver, whatever, right? Like for me, the people that work for my firm, they don't have to come into an office, and I
right.
don't care where they are.
Yep,
Um, and but the thing, a lot of leaders they struggle with it, because you can't see them, you can't. And so for me, it takes a little time to adjust. And now it's like I give people my trust off the bat,
right.
and it's
I
about
think that's smart.
output. Don't care how many hours you work. It's just
Right.
outcomes,
That's
and
right.
that's it.
That's in a knowledge-based work environment. That's exactly what we should be looking at is the
Yeah.
outcomes and not how they work or even when they work. Because if someone wants flexibility, they've got kids, they want to be able to do something in the morning and then something in the midday and then something in the evening and have some flexibility. Why do we care? Like
It's
again, again,
it
if
doesn't.
it's an outcome,
Absolutely, and then the other thing is it works well when people are also flexible. It's like a two-way. It should be just two-way.
yeah,
So if you've got a firm that just enables you to work from wherever you want, gives you the flexibility, then I think people are invested in it. They
yep,
want to do well and stuff. And hey, look, you might be doing a customer services job and you need to be on by
right.
a
That's
certain
different.
hours to answer the phones.
Yep,
It's different. So yeah, it's a two-way thing. And I think if you find the right spot and you value people, and people they'll go all in, and
I,
it's a good
I
team game, and it's beautiful, man.
I think there's a flexibility. The word flexibility, you hit on it. It's if you have a box and you want people to come to the box, there are going to be certain people that want to go to the box. And you know what I mean? Like that it's like
Yeah.
so let's not over index to the point of saying everyone wants to work remote forever, in every job. That's not necessarily true. In fact, there's studies of fresh grads that have been through COVID, that have been through remote and virtual for so long that they actually want to go to an office. Okay.
There were no, do you know that you're right. I had a great friend of mine, and he joined us, living in Canada, and 6 months in, he said, "Look, Lewis, like remote's not for me.
Yeah.
I want an office. If I want to
Yeah.
go in 5 days a week." And I said, "Look, there's no one size fits all. I
That's
can,
right. You know
absolutely.
what we've done, Lewis, is in those scenarios is we'll go get an office, a local office, like and
We
get them an
work."
office so that yeah, we work so that they can go to an office because they just want to disconnect
Well, that's what I've.
between home and
That's
office.
No, that's what we do. We say anyone who works with us, we get them a little a membership to a co-working space or a members
Yeah.
club or something like
Yeah.
that. And again, it's like it works really well for some people. Others, they want something different. So
That's right.
it's worth getting it when you're interviewing. Just kind of back to that. It's worth asking people how they want to work.
Yep.
Like
The
how are they
way
most
I've the
productive?
way I phrase that for the audience, the way I phrase that is where do you thrive? understanding where you thrive as an individual, as a candidate, and as an employee. Where do you thrive? Like I'm again squarely Gen X. If someone asked me to go to an office, I wouldn't know what to do. I don't own a suit. I don't even own dress clothes. Like I mean, but I mean, that's me, and I get that. But like, even if they overpaid for me, I'd still struggle with, like, I got to get in a car and go to a place. Like, really?
And there's all this etiquette involved as well.
I don't thrive there. I don't thrive there. That's not where I would thrive. I did that for years. I did that for 20 years. Like, I get it. But at this stage of my life, I think it's understanding yourself and where you thrive. I think that's really important for all candidates and employees.
Definitely. What a beautiful place to end. Love that.
Drops mic, walks off stage.
Thank you so much. Love it.
And reminder to set your fantasy team. So
I'm going to set my fantasy football team. And please subscribe to Recruiting Daily if you haven't already.
Please,
lovely, really good insights and articles and stuff. So,
and I will get you on my podcast. Now I have a to-do that I've already
only if you want me. I'm not forcing you to. Only if you want me.
No. This will be wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you.
Pleasure. No, I've obviously loved the conversation. And thank you everyone for watching. Hope you found it useful. I'm sure William won't mind some DMs if there's any follow-up questions or anything like that. Cool. Have a great one.